diplomacy timing window, where the rules are discussed and our opinions don't matter. My name is Kazadoom.
I'm Hungry Hippos.
And I'm the Half-Heard.
On today's episode, we will dive headfirst into the recent data dump that we got from Twilight Wars and explore the implications in terms of balance and the base game of the TI4 metagame. So first off, since November, since the reset, a total of 123 games were finished, with an average player count, if you average it out, to of 4.4 players per game. What's interesting here is that we have a very even distribution between 3, 4, and 6 player games that were finished, but for some reason 5-player games don't seem to be liked very much by the community, with only 21 being finished, which is just about a fourth of the other categories.
Shocked Pikachu face. I have to say though, I'm incredibly impressed with how even the distribution is between 3, 4, and 6. Like, that's amazing how it's so close there.
It seems like, Half-Heard, you've put a lot of the numbers into the 3-player game, though.
I've put a few in, yeah. I got a couple pretty good 3 players that I cycle through.
I mean, I'm actually surprised that the distribution is like this, because 3 and 4-player games just go so much quicker than 6-player games. So I would have expected them, just from a timing factor, to finish earlier.
Well, maybe what this is indicative of is that it's there are more 6-player games, right? Just not as many have finished.
Yeah, that could
be. Oh
yeah,
that's true. That takes forever to do them. So my question though is amongst the 6, 5, 4, and 3 for your own personal game or preference, that is, do you prefer 10 or 14 victory point ones for each of the player counts? I'm curious.
I'm big on 10 these days. I've played so many 14 points, and there's always this phase in the game where everything kind of gets boring. You have a round in there where you don't do anything.
I have to say, I have to agree. I like my 14 point games, but I've noticed more of a couple of my most recent games are 10 point, and it's kind of puts a flame under your butt. I was like, oh crap, I need victory points now. I can't wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. It makes the focus a little more honing in on getting those victory points early. For sure, they become a lot more important.
Yeah, my preference more urgent.
Yeah, my preference actually is similar. For 6-player, I'm really liking the 10 point these days, but I have to say for 3, 4, and 5, I still always go for 14 point. And I guess my reasoning for that is that I find 3-player, 4-player especially, 10 points, the game just ends so fast. You barely get into the stage 2 objectives now, I find.
Yeah. You for a 10-point game, I've noticed that you only get maybe 2 stage 2 objectives and then it's over.
Yeah. Also, honestly, for the way the 4-player map is built, you have way more systems per player. And especially with the 3-player map, the standard layout, I'm absolutely not a fan of.
So let's talk about the 5-player layout. It's inherently biased effectively to at least one or two.
It's not balanced in the sense that someone's going to have closer proximity to their neighbors than other players. But
Devs,
I have to
where is that warp lane?
I've heard we're not getting those anytime soon, unfortunately, but that would be a nice addition for sure. But I have to say, I've been playing I've probably played a handful of 5-player games recently. And I was a similar opinion originally, that I was not a fan of them because of the balance issue. But I have to say, the more I've played, the more I've enjoyed it. I find that the balance is not too big of a hurdle to overcome. And that added kind of interesting factor of where you always have at least 3 strategy cards unpicked just makes picking the strategy phase so much more important, I find, and makes the game much more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you just need to eliminate someone in a 6-player game, then you have the same effect.
Just
Make it
eliminate
sound
them.
so easy. Do you have experience in
No.
that department?
Yes, I'm eliminating myself in this SAR game, so got some major cred there.
Oh, new meta.
Yeah. No, but
Self-elimination.
what I wanted to add with the 3-player games, I hate the layout because it has 9. I think it's 9 more planets than the in total, and 3 more planets per player than a 6-player map. And I recently played just a 2-ring galaxy for 3 players, and it was amazingly close in terms of what you can do and how close you are to your friendly neighbors and stuff. So
I saw your suggestion on the second ring 3-player setup and looked pretty interesting for sure.
yeah.
Does each of your faction choices matter, dependent on the number of players that are expected to be in the game?
Definitely for me, I'd say I like picking those I guess lower tier factions a lot more in 3 and 4 player, right? Because a faction like Winu or Muat, where you're struggling at the beginning, suddenly when you have 2 strategy cards in hand, your options become a lot more open. You're not as
they're
restricted,
also way
I find.
stronger for 14 points than they are for 10 points, I think.
Yeah, I see myself wanting to do an Embers or a Sardak more often if I was in a 4 or 3-player game than if I'm in a 6.
Yeah.
All right, talking factions, we also got the win rates for the factions. So this is actually the one in blue is from the Twilight Wars, and we already adjusted it to expected win rate. So basically saying that as we have an average of about 4.4 players per game, you should have about a 22% chance to win a game just if everything was perfectly balanced. And we corrected by that. So 0 would mean that you're exactly at the expected win rate. And everything above or below means that you're winning more or less than the expected win rate that you would have. Also, we have in here the Reddit data from the data collection project, who did the same thing, but with way more games and way more, and all the factions in the game included, which we have not listed yet because they're not relevant to us yet.
Yep, you'll notice we left out Mentak, Ghosts, and the Yin Brotherhood.
And before we continue, we have to give credit for the Reddit conglomerate of data to nateprokrasti for creating that awesome Google spreadsheet that combines all that information from over 5,000 games played.
Nice.
Yeah, link is in the description if you want to dive into those data. It's pretty amazing what they did there.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting.
It's way more than what we show here.
Yeah, the sample size far larger. Yeah. So, but you can see there's somewhat
skill and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there is a somewhat of almost a shared balance between the two, except for a few of the factions.
It's interesting. Yeah, at the top and bottom ends, right? Yeah, that you see the trends very similar, and then in the middle it gets a little bit
little messy.
Yeah, where they don't exactly line up, but the top 4 and the bottom 2 kind of follow similar trends.
Yeah, so it is expected that if you're playing Embers or Sardak in general, they're not going to be your best factions.
Expect to lose.
Conversely, the Universities of Jalnar, Federation of Sol, Clan of Sar, more likely to win.
Right, let's look at the top 3. Let's look at the top 3 factions first: universities, clan, and federation. And what are your guys' thoughts? How do you feel about seeing that both across the Reddit and the Twilight Wars data, being at the top tier?
I think it kind of harkens back to one of our episodes that where we touched on being able to maybe take in some of POK into Twilight Wars app and maybe make a hybrid model. We looked at what are the current objectives that can be scored, and they heavily favor Universities of Jalnar in the base game. because of the research-based objectives. So I'm not surprised there.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but
in my opinion, second stage objectives are what win games. And the way the base game stands is you have, 4 objectives, which are spending, whether it's trade goods, resources, influence, or tokens. You got 2 tech objectives and 4 control objectives.
Yeah.
Plus, Jolnar has E-res siphons,
Yep.
and they'll get you all of those resource, influence, and trade good based objectives quite easily.
It's basically the thing, if you're about to win, nobody can attack you anymore. Which they either
Give
like
me all
get
of
your
the
home
money.
system.
Seems like a
and
catch-22.
It's like, yeah, you're there, you spread out, and then you have ERAS, and whenever somebody does something against you, just 4 resources to build my war zone. Want to activate another system?
Yeah, and E-res is easy for you to get. It's basically one of the very first things that I research, because I can go straight to it by skipping a tech.
Yep.
That is if I don't go and get Cruiser 2 to get Mechatol first round.
I've never seen that work, but
No, I've done it 2 times so far. Almost won one of the games.
yeah. So I would say Jolnar is just kudos to their ease of scoring objectives in ERAS. For SAR and Federation of Soul, I have to say they're just very solid factions.
I am personally somewhat surprised at the SAR one. It's hard to create a SAR ball because the command token capacity in your fleet is hard to build up.
I find that the SAR ball is not so much in the fleet as it is in the fighter disparity, right? No one else can bring as many fighters into a fight as SAR can.
Yep.
And I think that's what makes them top tier, right? Obviously, they get from their scavenge ability, they can get trade goods, not as quickly as Jolnar can with E-res, but it's still at a decent rate. Getting a trade good every time you take a planet.
The combination of a very good early start, because you can get super far ahead if you can scavenge a lot in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also, you can't be stopped. Like, they can't take your home system to stop you from scoring.
That's a great point. I think that's another key to SAR, right? Is that there's no way to stop them from scoring objectives, right?
I'd say the only way in which SAR actually becomes a winnable faction versus someone who's super powerful and solid is SAR has to have one ally. They have to, or else, from either side, you're going to get gobbled up as you explore the rest of the map. So it's hard to keep what you have.
I guess the other factor is asteroid placement, because if you can get a good chaos mapping asteroid field, that just gives you access to tons of planets.
I don't think that wins games, but it's definitely something where you can survive long enough to stall out to win, if that makes sense.
And there's also, I think, a difference in 10-point games versus 14-point games on which of these upper factions are going to be even better. I think Universities is going to excel in the 14-point game, so will Clan SAR, but or in my own personal opinion, Yastral Tribes would be another great one as the game travels on, because it's just the accumulation of cards that just becomes somewhat unbeatable.
Yeah, I guess my only counter there is I would disagree and say that I think SAR is better in the 10-point games, because Gravity Drive and their blue tech path is their very I guess typical path, and I find the Mechatol rush in a 10-point game a lot of times wins games, and SAR is great at rushing Mechatol, but then also staying on Mechatol and not caring too much about, also protecting their home, the way, like, for example, Winu could do a Mechatol rush, but can't ignore their home as well. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, the third faction is Soul, and I think they just have a lot of going for them. The additional token is always nice. You get independence from your slice a bit. Your infantry is super strong. I always underestimate them. And also once you have your Mechatol and the PD, it's hard to get you off Mechatol.
Mm-hmm. One of the factions that we've seemed to have skipped over is the Nalu Collective, whereas in the Reddit data, they're one of the top factions that's over expected to win, versus on the app, their performance has been waning. What do you guys think is attributed to that? Because my understanding of Nalu is not as, I haven't played it as much to, I guess, have confidence in any opinion that I might have there, other than they are fun, and being able to take tokens from someone's fleet pool is always fun.
I think Nalu is super strong for sure. And I would attribute this data disparity likely to the fact that they're still new in the app and they probably don't have as many games as the rest.
Yeah, and it's the same with Necrovirus. It's one of the flagship ships that you might screw up on, that might cost you games. Because if you forget to lift your infantry up with the Necrovirus flagship, you basically lose a fight, and that happened to me once, and I saw it in a few games happen.
Yeah,
the same is with Nalu. I also saw that somebody did not get the fighters down onto ground combat and lost the fight for that. So, but well, I would say like the main thing with Nalu is that they have the best ship in the game, in my opinion. The fighters, the Crystal Fighters,
Crystal Fighter too.
Yeah, and their Initiative 0 is just great in closing out the game, because you know you always will score first.
My favorite note to myself on the app when I played Nalu for the first time, as soon as I got Hybrid Crystal Fighter 2, was no cruisers with a bunch of exclamation points.
Just a quarter of the price.
Yeah, quarter of the price, the same relative hit rate.
Yeah, they are. They are the exact same as an unupgraded cruiser.
Yeah, and I can make stats. 4 of them.
And they can be held in capacity.
Yes, and are half capacity outside of it.
And they're better with moral boost, and they have fighter prototype, which is ridiculous as well.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really intelligent note for myself.
Yeah. my note when I play Nalu is remember, you always go first.
Yep.
Because I sometimes forget that when I'm choosing my strategy cards and I'm thinking I got to go ahead of this player. But really, it doesn't matter.
And whoever trades their promissory note, that's so rare, I guess, with Nalu.
Can I vent a little frustration about the Necrovirus? I love the Necrovirus. Being somewhat aggressive is it's just fun. It pisses people off, and that tickles my fancy. But their flagship is supposed to be, I thought, a kind of mirror to the Nalu Collective, which can hold 6. But no, the Necro flagship holds 3, which means being able to use the infantry as fighters it's like, it's great, but it only holds 3. Like, what the hell?
Well, you're just parking over a planet that has like 7,000 infantry and laugh at everybody that's not Winnu.
Anyway, I'm really annoyed at the Necro's flagship.
True. Yeah. I was gonna say, I wonder if it's because the infantry have better combat stats than fighters, but I mean, that's not true for the case of the
Nalu's Hybrid Crystal Fighter.
Yeah.
So I am at a loss.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, unless I'm next to a soul who has Spec Ops. So
you should never research Spec Ops with them in play.
Yep. I'll give credit to in one of my games where I'm a Necro against a Soul, and Soul is just refusing to research anything. Incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, it is annoying.
Yeah, but then I mean, we also have the bottom end, which is Muad, Nor, and for the app, Winnu.
So, speaking of the 3 factions that are missing, Mentaki and the Ghosts, do you think that they would significantly impact win faction rates amongst our stats here?
I don't think they would do much, because they're not really good against the factions that are the top factions.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I could see them for sure having, I could see in my mind, Mentak having an impact on a number of factions, but like you say, not the highest ranked ones. But I think that's where you could see this disparity maybe in things like Barony and Lizix, because they're pretty decent counters to those factions.
Yeah.
And Muat as well, but I mean Muat's, I would say they're right where they belong.
It's just so weird. You
I mean,
start
it's
off
just-
with a war son.
Yeah, they're one of those factions where I remember when I first started this game and I saw them and my eyes lit up saying, wow, these guys are the best. They start with a war son on the board. I mean, come on, right?
That's all they have, yeah.
Yeah, and it's completely underwhelming. So
I mean,
He's been whelmed.
it's a fun contrast because my last 2 3-player games, one is still running with Muad and the other one is running with finished with Nor, and they're just such fun factions in POK. They just got so much fun stuff to do. Like Umbat, just I built first action with Muad is just build a carrier, build a destroyer for my home system resources, and spread out a bit more than I could do in the base game.
mhm.
That alone makes or breaks them for the base game because it's just so dependent on warfare timing.
Embers is fun in the POK, in my opinion. Being able to take any tile on the board and turn it into a supernova. And of course,
Yep.
supernovas
Fantastic.
being even better for embers in the POK, being able to produce in them and all that. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and nor the ability to just go to adjacent systems without a carrier is just amazing. It's just so great.
I wonder, is there, I haven't seen it, but is there a similar kind of Reddit stat gathering post for POK based games?
I think they started it and they also started it with, they might have actually integrated it with Tabletop Simulator because you can now, on the load up of the game, choose to share anonymous data.
I'd really be interested
Yeah.
to see what
I have
the
to check that out. I did
changes
not
would be
because,
for that.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean, Titans
maybe-
of Uul obviously are going to take over where the universities are. It's obvious.
It's obvious.
I mean,
It's just science.
It's just there's no argument there. I think we did an episode on that. No one can argue that. It's flawless.
Yeah. But yeah, it will be interesting and it's something to watch out for when they have a good sample size.
Actually, I want to make a challenge. Anyone who's listening to this, if you think there is a way to argue that the Titans are not ridiculous and wouldn't be at the top of this list, the challenge has been set. We will have that debate anytime you want, and we'll record it too. It'll be fun.
Yep. Keep dreaming. That's what I think.
I'd just be so impressed. I don't know what I'd be able to say against what they would have to say.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, the other thing that's kind of funny is that the Winu seem to have a above average win rate in the overall data.
Oh
But
yeah, look at
for the
that.
Twilight Wars app,
Mhm.
they're like one of the crap factions.
Now that's an interesting one. I mean, the Twilight Wars data makes sense to me. But I can't think of a way to explain away the Reddit data. What are your thoughts
I've
on
played
that?
them a few times, and every time I feel like I have nothing to begin with. And if I do what the faction is designed to do, I get nothing all game. And unless somebody decides to just leave me on Mechatol.
Yeah, I think that's
Like,
there's a big, almost a coin flip there. If you get to Mechatol as Winu, will someone gobble the rest of your slice up, and then you'll be left with Mechatol in your home system, or will they leave you alone? In which case, then it makes sense that you win. So I wonder I wonder what those scenarios are. If there's an in-between scenario, I haven't been able to figure it out, just like Kaz was saying. So
I mean, I had a scenario in one game where I had a yellow skip. So I started with Sarvine tools and was able to get the faction tech where I can switch influence and production.
That's nice.
That super early was super good, and I might have won the game, but yeah, that was the one game with Winnu where I actually felt comfortable playing them.
Yeah, they are stressful and awkward.
I'd say they start almost, actually not almost, I say they start worse than Muat does. I mean, at least Muat gets 4 infantry. Like, for crying out loud, Winnu starts with a single carrier and 2 infantry.
Hey, and they have a cruiser. Don't forget that cruiser.
Never
Don't forget the
forget.
cruiser, which
Never
is
forget that
completely
cruiser.
useless.
But you know what I mean, right? Like, at least Muat, for example, if you can get that carrier on the board, then you can get your second system. That's not the case with Winnu. You need to get both infantry and another capacity unit.
And you only have 3 resources on your home planet.
Oh, it's unbelievable. I don't know why.
You don't need the influence to get Mimic at all, and in POK they got a huge boost.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like POK
POK.
Winnu a lot. I think they got some much needed love there.
They might be actually one of the factions that can compete with Titans, because they also get structures even more easily than Titans. Just saying.
I don't. I mean,
Just have a mech
nothing
and
as easy as the way the Titans have it.
And I mean, you got a different array of techs you can choose from to begin the game with, which is also great.
An
Instead
array
of
of
the
techs
4
versus not needing techs. You know,
No, but you
Titans
have,
need like 3 techs.
No, but what I mean is you can now start with energy tap, for instance, or you can start with AI development algorithm, or just to toss out some stuff. So you have more options to adapt to the map if you have a stupid map setup that doesn't favor you.
It looks like Kaz is taking up the challenge.
And honestly, you have +2 to hit the new home system and Mechatol.
See,
And
he's
you have
ready. He's ready for
free
you.
Imperial.
He's already
You have a
laying
free
out
Imperial
the
with your
landscape.
hero. You have a free Imperial with your hero. What should you do? Just score 2 points or 1.
All right, you heard it here first. We're gonna
Winnu
have a
versus
rumble.
Titans.
Winnu versus Titans. Keep
I-
your
I have
eyes
I've
peeled
played
for that
Titans.
episode.
I've played Titans once. I've seen them 3 times now, 4 times I think, but I haven't seen Winnu yet or played them yet in POK. So I'm looking forward to seeing them in action.
Okay, we'll give you a little bit more time to understand the error of your opinion right now.
All I'm saying is that they give them a run for their money.
What about those last 3 before we clock out here?
My apologies.
The Barony, the ones I'm talking about, Barony, Arboric, and Cha, right? Another pretty big disparity. And I would say I'm pretty surprised, especially with Barony, right? I like the Twilight Wars data that kind of jives with my worldview. To see them with a negative expected win rate, that surprises me. I feel like they're a very strong faction.
I mean, it's 5%. I'd say, in my opinion, they're right on where they should be, within a plus or minus the 5% there, which is basically as expected. You'd win about as many times as is as expected. Yeah, as expected. Too many words in there, but yeah, I'm not as surprised. They're pretty awesome fighting, but then so are Sardak, and they're way down there. They have a good tech path, but then, you know, it's not the Universities of Jalnar. They got a good balance, but it's, I don't know, it's difficult because you need to spend the resources to do munitions reserves. They only have 2 commodities, so you can't rack them up for the other victory points that are resource based.
I would say
gotta be
they're
one
a
of the
great
worst.
faction, but they have a hard time scoring certain objectives.
That's fair. Well, what about the Cha Kingdom, right? Minus 20 almost. It's over a 20-point swing from the Twilight Wars data to the Reddit data. That's That's quite something. And I have to say, I'm pretty surprised at them sitting at the third worst faction. I would not peg them at that.
That is true. It's super interesting. Without considering the Twilight Wars data, if just thinking of it conceptually, for me, the Jha Kingdom, they turtle. They have a hard time expanding. They get a good time keeping. And you have to be able to expand once you get to the second round objectives.
Yeah, I would also say one factor with Xja is that diplomacy is not getting picked often, especially first round, and it kind of forces you into the diplomacy pick.
Right.
And perhaps because there are more 4-player games in the Twilight Wars app than there are potentially in the Reddit data, the Jha Kingdom tends to then benefit more.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your inputs.
Well, I think we've spent enough time stalling in this time window, so let's hit the pause button and keep the game moving.